Hey, I just saw it. Is that number real? Linda didn't wait for a response. I had to read it twice. I wasn't sure if it was a typo. I was sitting at my desk when the call came in. The article still open on my screen. My name at the top. The number halfway down, placed in a sentence like it was just another detail. "You've been busy," she added, almost laughing. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" I didn't answer that, because she wasn't really asking. Then her tone shifted, slightly. "I've actually been thinking about a few things," she said. "There's a way we could do something really smart with this." I leaned back in my chair, looked at the number again, and realized something immediately. She hadn't come up with that plan in the last hour. That's where this starts. Before that call, before the article, before that number was attached to my name, you need to understand how I moved around money in my family. Because it was never something we talked about directly. It was something people assumed. Linda was never aggressive about it. She didn't criticize me, didn't try to stop anything I was doing. She just placed me in a category that made sense to her. Same as everyone else. Same range. Same expectations. I remember a Sunday lunch at my parents' house when I was around 28. Nothing formal. Just the usual group. Food on the table. Conversations overlapping. At one point, someone asked about work. "What are you doing these days?" an uncle said. Before I could answer, Linda said, "He's trying a few things. Still figuring it out." Light tone. Not dismissive enough to challenge. Just defining. I nodded slightly. Didn't correct it. Because it wasn't entirely wrong. Just incomplete. That was her pattern. Not sharp. Not direct. Just certain. A few months later, we were at another gathering. Different people. Same kind of conversation. Someone mentioned investments. Markets. Returns. Linda said, "I stay pretty conservative. I don't like unnecessary risk." Then she glanced at me and added, "Unlike him." A few small laughs. I said nothing, because explaining it would have required context I didn't want to give. And more importantly, it wouldn't have changed anything. She wasn't reacting to information. She was reacting to an assumption. And assumptions don't move with explanations. If you've ever had someone quietly decide who you are and continue speaking to that version of you, even when it's no longer accurate, you understand how stable those assumptions can be. If that sounds familiar, stay with me. Because that stability is exactly what I used. I didn't build anything loudly. There was no point, no announcement, no moment where I said, "This is what I'm doing now." I just started structuring things differently. Investments first. Careful. Deliberate. Nothing that would stand out in a conversation. Nothing that would require explanation. I tracked everything. Numbers. Movement. Risk. I remember sitting at my desk one evening around 10:40, reviewing a set of positions. Adjusting small percentages. Moving capital in a way that didn't draw attention. Because that was the goal. Not secrecy. Just invisibility. Then came the business side. Separate from that. Built the same way. Quiet. Controlled. No expansion that required validation. No decisions that needed approval. Just steady movement forward. For 5 years, it stayed like that. No one asked. No one noticed. And I didn't offer anything. Not because I was hiding it. Because I understood something early. People treat potential differently than they treat outcomes. And I wasn't interested in managing that difference. During those 5 years, I still showed up the same way. Same conversations. Same responses. If someone asked how things were going, I said good. If they asked what I was working on, I said a few things. No details. No numbers. Just enough to move past the question. Linda stayed consistent. Same tone. Same assumptions. At one point, maybe 2 years in, she said, "You'll settle into something eventually." I nodded. "I will." She smiled. Like that confirmed something for her. And I let it. Because correcting her at that point would have required revealing something I wasn't ready to make visible. And there was no advantage in doing that early. The structure held. Year after year. Small decisions stacking. Compounding quietly. No sudden shifts. No visible jumps. Just accumulation. Until it reached a point where it couldn't stay contained anymore. Not because I chose to reveal it. because something external made it visible. A transaction, a number that had to be reported, an article that picked it up, placed it in a sentence, attached my name to it. Public, clear, no interpretation needed. And within 1 hour of that going live, my phone rang. Linda, same name, different tone. And when she started talking, it was immediately obvious. She hadn't been thinking about this for the first time. She had been waiting for the number to confirm it. That's when I knew. This wasn't a reaction. It was a plan. I didn't answer right away. I let it ring once, twice. Watched her name on the screen like it didn't belong in this moment. Then I picked it up. Hey, I just saw it. Is that number real? She said. I didn't respond immediately because I knew what she meant. The article, she added quickly. I had to read it twice. It's accurate, I said. There was a short pause. Then she let out a small laugh. That's wow. That's actually incredible. I nodded slightly, even though she couldn't see it. Thanks. Her tone stayed warm, but it wasn't casual anymore. There was structure behind it. I mean, you've been busy, she said. Why didn't you tell anyone? I didn't need to. Another pause. Then she said, well, people are definitely talking about it now. I'm sure they are. She let that sit for a second, then shifted. I'm really proud of you, she said. That word again. Proud. It landed clean. Didn't connect to anything before. Just placed there. Thank you, I said. There was a brief silence. Then she moved forward. I've actually been thinking about a few things, she said. There it was. Early. Direct. I leaned back slightly in the chair. Yeah, she said. And honestly, this changes a lot. I didn't respond, because that sentence wasn't about me. It was about her. I've been looking at some opportunities recently, she continued. Different spaces, different structures, things that could scale properly. I let her talk, didn't interrupt, because this part needed to come out fully. And when I saw your name this morning, she said, it just clicked. What did? I asked. That we should do something together. Clear. No hesitation. Placed like it had always been there. I didn't respond right away. Just let the sentence sit. She continued. I mean, you've built something real, she said. And I've got a good sense of where things can go next. Sense. Not experience. Not involvement. Just positioning. I've been researching a few models, she added. Structures that would make this work efficiently. That part was new. More specific. More prepared. I noticed that. You've been researching? I asked. Yes, she said. For a while. There it was. Not an hour. Longer. I didn't comment on that. She kept going. I've mapped out a couple of options, she said. One more conservative, one more aggressive. Both could work depending on how you want to position things. Mapped out. Options. Clear language. Not improvised. She had thought about this. I can walk you through it, she added. It's actually pretty straightforward. I looked at the screen in front of me. The article's still open. My name. The number. Placed in a way that made everything visible. And I thought about the last 5 years. How none of that had included her. Not in conversation. Not in support. Not in awareness. She adjusted her tone again. Softer. More personal. I always knew you'd figure something out, she said. That sentence again. Different form. Same meaning. I didn't respond to it. Because it didn't connect to anything real. She filled the space. I mean, you've always had that drive, she said. I kept my answer simple. I stayed consistent. That's what I mean, she said quickly. Then she moved back into structure. So here's what I'm thinking, she said. And this time, she went into detail. Actual detail. Timelines. Possible allocations. Ways to structure involvement. Even mentioned a specific percentage. Not random. Considered. That part surprised me. Not because it was impressive. Because it confirmed something. She hadn't started thinking about this when she saw the article. She had been preparing for this possibility. Waiting for confirmation. And now she had it. So that's the outline, she said after a few minutes. Her tone steady. Confident. Like she had just presented something complete. I think it makes sense, she added. For both of us. I didn't speak immediately. Not because I needed time. Because I wanted to hear if she would add anything else. She didn't. The structure was finished. That's when I knew. This wasn't a reaction. It was a proposal she had been waiting to deliver. I didn't respond right away. I let her last sentence sit there. On her side, it probably felt like a pause. On mine, it was a confirmation. She had finished. Everything she wanted to say was already on the table. "So what do you think?" she asked. Her tone was steady, not uncertain, just waiting for alignment. I leaned back in a chair, looked at the screen in front of me. The article's still open. The number's still there. Then I asked, "Linda, when did you last call me before today?" There was a pause. Not long. Just enough for her to register that this wasn't the answer she expected. "What do you mean?" she said. I didn't adjust it. "When was the last time we spoke before this call?" Another pause. Slightly longer this time. "I don't know exactly," she said. "It's been a while." I nodded once. "I do." Silence. No interruption. No attempt to answer. "It was 14 months ago," I said. Clear. Measured. I have the date. That landed. Not dramatically. Just precisely. Like placing something on a table that couldn't be moved. She didn't respond right away. Because there wasn't an easy way to shift that. "I've been meaning to call," she said. The sentence came out quickly. Like it had been used before. I didn't react to it. Because intention without action doesn't change anything. "You didn't," I said. No emphasis. Just the sentence. She exhaled slightly. "I've been busy," she added. I let that sit. Because it wasn't incorrect. It just wasn't relevant. We were both quiet for a few seconds. Long enough for the conversation to change shape. Then she said, "I don't see how that connects to what I just explained." I looked at the number again. Then back at nothing in particular. "It connects directly," I said. Another pause. Then she said, "I'm trying to do something positive here." I know. That stopped her. Because it removed the direction she expected. "I'm offering something that could be beneficial," she said. "I understand that. And you're bringing up old communication patterns," she added. "Yes." There was a longer silence this time. Not empty. Just settled. Then she said, "People get busy. That doesn't mean anything." "It does," I said. Still calm. Still even. She didn't interrupt. Didn't push back immediately. Because the structure of the conversation had shifted. Out of opportunity. Into something simpler. Consistency. I continued. "You didn't call when there was nothing visible," I said. Silence. "You didn't ask what I was working on." No response. "You didn't check in," I added. She exhaled again. Audible this time. "I've already said I was going to," she replied. "You didn't," I said. That was the difference. Not what she intended. What actually happened. We stayed quiet again. A few seconds. Then she said, more controlled now, "So what are you saying?" I didn't hesitate. "I'm saying this conversation is happening because of that number." No emphasis. No accusation. Just identification. She didn't respond immediately. Because that part couldn't be adjusted. It was already clear. "That's not fair," she said finally. I didn't react to the word. Because fairness wasn't part of this. Accuracy was. "I'm not evaluating it," I said. "I'm just identifying it." Another pause. Then she said, quieter now, "I thought we could do something good here." "I'm sure you did." And I meant that. Not dismissive. Just factual. She had put effort into the plan. That part was real. Then I added, "I'll think about it." She paused. That wasn't the answer she expected. It wasn't a yes. It wasn't a no. But it also wasn't an opening. "Okay," she said. "I'd like that." Her tone shifted slightly. Less certain now, but still holding structure. "I'll send you everything," she added. "You can go through it properly." "All right." There was one more pause. Short. Then she said, "It's really good to hear from you." "You too," I said. And I meant it. Not emotionally. Just as a statement. Then the line disconnected. I set the phone down on the desk. Didn't pick it back up. Didn't check for a message. Didn't open anything she might send next. Because the conversation had already defined everything it needed to. She had a plan. I had a standard. And the difference between those two things was already clear. She sent the details the next morning. Email. Subject line clear. Structured. Opportunity overview. I opened it once. Not immediately. Around 10:15, after I'd already gone through everything else that mattered. The document was clean, organized, sections broken down properly, market analysis, allocation strategy, timeline, even projections. She had spent time on it, more than a few hours. This wasn't something she built overnight. That part confirmed what I already knew. She had been thinking about this long before the number became public, waiting for it to be confirmed, then moving. I read through the entire thing, start to finish. Didn't rush it, didn't skim, because if I was going to decide, it needed to be based on what was actually there, not what I assumed. At one point, she referenced leveraging existing capital positions. That phrasing stayed with me, because it didn't come from knowing me. It came from knowing what I now represented. That was the distinction. I closed the document, didn't respond, didn't mark it, just left it where it was. Because the answer wasn't in the proposal. It had already been decided in the call. 2 days later, my mother called again. "Did you see what Linda sent?" she asked. "Yes." There was a pause. "Well, I'm not interested." Another pause. Then she said, "She put a lot of effort into that. I can see that. And you're not even going to consider it." I did. That stopped her. "Just enough. I thought you two could actually do something together," she said. "I understand that." She waited, like there should be more. There wasn't. Then she said, "It might be good for the family." I didn't respond immediately, because that word had been used a few times now. Family. Always at the point where something needed to be justified. "I keep my work separate," I said. That was enough. She didn't argue. Didn't agree. Just shifted. "Well, she's disappointed." "I understand." That was the end of it. A few days after that, my father mentioned it. Not directly, just in passing. "Your sister's been talking about that idea," he said. "I'm sure she has. You should at least meet with her," he added. "I won't." He looked at me for a second, not surprised, just confirming. "All right," he said. And that was it. No pressure, no attempt to push further. That mattered, because for the first time, no one was trying to reshape my answer. They were just hearing it. Linda sent one more message. Short. "Did you get a chance to review everything?" I read it. Didn't respond. Not because I was ignoring her, because there was nothing new to say. Responding would have implied there was still a version of the conversation moving forward. There wasn't. About a week later, there was another family gathering. I hadn't planned to go, but I did. Not for them, just because it didn't matter who was there anymore. When I walked in, Linda was already in the room, standing near the center, talking. Same posture, same presence. Some things don't change. She saw me almost immediately, paused, then walked over. "Hey," she said. "Hey." There was a moment. Not awkward, just direct. "I sent you something," she said. "I saw it, and I'm not interested." Same sentence, same tone, no variation. She nodded slowly, like she had expected a different version of that answer in person. I thought if we talked about it face to face, it wouldn't change anything. She stopped, not abruptly, just enough. Then she said, "You're being very firm about this." "I am." Another pause. Then she said, "I'm trying to build something with you." I know. That stopped her again, because it removed the direction she was expecting. "I just think it makes sense," she said. "It does for you." That landed. She didn't respond immediately, because that part couldn't be adjusted. We stood there for a few seconds, people moving around us, conversations continuing, nothing focused on us. Then she said, quieter now, "I didn't think you'd shut it down this quickly." "I didn't," I said. That was the truth. The decision had already been made before she finished the proposal, because it wasn't based on the plan. It was based on the pattern. She nodded once, then said, "All right." No argument, no escalation, just acceptance. We didn't continue the conversation. Didn't need to. She went back to the group she had been speaking with. I moved to the other side of the room, and that was it. No tension, no follow-up, because the boundary had already been set, and there was nothing left to negotiate. After that, it didn't stop immediately. It just changed shape. No more direct calls from Linda. No long messages. No structured proposals. Instead, it started coming through other people. A few days later, an aunt called. Linda mentioned you've been doing very well, she said. I've been working, I replied. She laughed lightly. Well, it sounds like more than that. I didn't respond. Then she said, she told me you two were talking about something together. We spoke, and I'm not interested. There was a pause. Not uncomfortable, just adjusting. Well, you know how family is, she said. I didn't respond to that, because that phrase had already been used enough. Instead, I said, I keep things simple. She nodded, even though I couldn't see it. That's fair. And then the conversation moved on. That was the pattern. A cousin sent a message a few days after that. Short. Heard things are going well. We should catch up sometime. I read it. Didn't respond immediately, because I recognized the tone. Not direct, not specific, just open. I replied later that evening. Sure. Let me know when. No mention of anything else. No expansion. Because if someone wanted to connect, it needed to exist without context. Without the number. Without the article. A few of those conversations actually held. We met. Talked. Normal pace. No reference to money. No shift in tone. Those stayed. Because they were real. Others didn't. Another message came through a few days later. More direct. We should talk. I have a few ideas that could be really strong with your current position. I didn't respond. Because that wasn't a relationship. That was an approach. And those were easy to identify now. At another gathering, a week later, it came up again. Different people. Same conversation. Someone mentioned the article. The number. My name. Must feel good, someone said. It's progress, I replied. Linda was in the room. She didn't say anything. Didn't insert herself. Didn't redirect the conversation. Just stayed where she was. That mattered. Because it showed something clearly. She understood. There was no version of that situation where she could step in. Not anymore. Later that evening, I stepped outside for a minute. The air was cooler, quieter than the room behind me. I stood near the edge of the driveway, hand in my pockets, cars passing occasionally. Nothing urgent, nothing pulling at me, and I noticed something clearly. The number hadn't changed anything. It had just revealed things. Who called? Who didn't? Who asked about me? And who asked about access? That distinction became obvious very quickly. A few days later, I got a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Simple. No idea what you've been working on, but I saw your name. Glad you're doing well. No follow-up. No question. Just acknowledgement. I replied. Appreciate it. That was it. No extension. Because it didn't need one. That kind of message didn't ask for anything. And that's why it stood out. The rest settled into place naturally. The people who reached out without an angle stayed. Those conversations grew. Slowly. Without pressure. Without structure. Just connection. The others stopped. Not because I pushed them away. Because there was nothing for them to move toward. No opening. No version of the conversation that shifted into opportunity. Just polite distance. And that was enough. One evening, I was at home going through a few things when I noticed something. I hadn't thought about Linda in days. Not intentionally. Not as something I was avoiding. Just naturally. The conversation had ended, and nothing had replaced it. No tension. No unfinished version. Just absence of something that had already been handled. I closed the laptop, sat there for a second, then stood up and walked into the next room. Because there was nothing left in that situation that needed attention. Everything had already been decided, clearly, and it stayed that way. A few weeks later, everything settled completely. Not because anything dramatic happened, because nothing did. The calls stopped. The indirect messages stopped. No more conversations passed through other people. No more, you should at least talk to her. Everything that had tried to move towards something simply didn't have anywhere to go. And without that movement, it disappeared. The mornings stayed the same. 6:30. Alarm. Kitchen. Coffee. I stood at the counter one morning watching the light come through the window. Same angle. Same reflection across the surface. Nothing carried over. That was the first thing I noticed. After something like that, you expect a remainder. A thought that lingers. A version of the conversation that replays when things get quiet. There was none of that. My phone was on the counter, face down. I turned it over once. No notifications. No missed calls. Nothing from her. Nothing from anyone connected to that situation. And I realized something clearly. I hadn't checked it expecting anything. That part was gone. My son came into the kitchen a few minutes later, still half asleep, sat down and said, "Do we have cereal?" "Yes." He nodded, started eating. My daughter followed, looked around. "Is it a school day?" "Yes." She paused, then said, "Okay," like she had expected a different answer. Routine. Everything exactly where it should be. And that's when it settled fully. Nothing from that situation had followed me into this. Not the call, not the proposal, not even the number. It had all stayed where it happened. Separate, finished. Work moved the same way it always had. Meetings, calls, decisions that actually mattered. Things that required attention in a way that didn't leave space for distraction. That's where my focus stayed. Because that's what had built everything. Not visibility, not recognition, just consistency. One decision after another, made when no one was watching. A few of the conversations that came out of all of this stayed. Not many, but enough. People who reached out without referencing the article, without adjusting their tone, without asking anything beyond what they would have asked before. We met. Coffee. Short conversations. Normal pace. One of them said, "I had no idea what you were working on." "I didn't talk about it," I said. He nodded. Fair. No follow-up. No shift. That's how you know something is real. It doesn't change shape when context changes. Others didn't hold. One message came in a few days later. More direct. "I've been thinking about a few ways we could collaborate given your position now." I read it. Set the phone down. Didn't respond. Because that wasn't a conversation. That was an angle. And those were easy to see now. Clear. Immediate. At another small gathering, someone brought it up again. Different group. Same reaction. "I saw the article," they said. "That's a big number." "It's a result," I replied. They nodded. "That must feel good. It's progress." That was enough. Linda was there, across the room, not speaking, not inserting herself, just present. That mattered more than anything she could have said, because it showed something clearly. She understood the boundary. Not because I explained it again, because I didn't. Later that evening, I stepped outside for a minute. The air was cooler, quieter than the room behind me. I stood near the edge of the driveway, hands in my pockets, cars passing occasionally. Nothing urgent, nothing pulling at me. And I noticed something clearly. The number hadn't changed anything. It had revealed everything. Who reached out? Who didn't? Who asked about me? And who asked about access? That distinction had never been clearer. A few days later, I was driving through my hometown again. Same streets, same turns, same houses. Nothing had changed. I slowed down near my parents' house. Didn't stop. Just paused for a second longer than usual. Then kept driving. Because there wasn't anything there I needed to revisit. Not in the way it used to matter. Not in the way it wants to find things. It existed, but separately. That night, I was sitting in the living room. No television, just the quiet. I thought about something briefly. Not the conversation, not the proposal. What had clarified? For years, I had moved without explaining anything. Not because I was hiding it, because I didn't want to manage reactions. And when everything became visible, the reactions came anyway. Exactly as expected. That confirms something. You don't control how people respond. You just decide how you engage with it. If there's one thing I took from all of this, it's simple. Money doesn't create new relationships. It exposes the structure of the ones that already exist. Who shows up, when they show up, and why? You don't need to challenge it. You don't need to argue with it. You just need to recognize it. Once, clearly, and then respond accordingly. I didn't decline Linda's proposal because of what she said. I declined it because of when she said it. That was the only part that mattered. And once that was clear, there was nothing left to decide. If that felt familiar to you, you already understand. If you've ever had someone appear in your life the moment things became visible, you know exactly what that shift feels like. Subscribe and tell me this. Have you ever noticed how differently people treat you once something about your life becomes undeniable? What changed first, them or you? There's another story I want to share with you. Because sometimes the most valuable thing success gives you is clarity.